Today is Thursday, December 26, 2024, and this is Spring Office Hours Season 3, Episode 44, 2024 Year in Review. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how's it going?
It's a great day. It's been a great year to be a Spring developer, and
That's true.
wow, holidays are done-ish. Uh, the holidays that we celebrate with the kids is done. New Year's is right around the corner, and man, yeah, what a time. What a year.
Yeah, I'm wearing, for those on the podcast, I'm wearing my festive Santa Claus hat because it's still the holidays. It takes many days for younger kids to open up all the toys and play with them. So that's what we're doing around here. They got some roller skates. We couldn't get outside yet, so they were roller skating in the basement. Because I was like, let's take this a little bit slow because I feel like there's going to be some injuries here.
I mean, as there should be, right? That's part of it, right? That
Yeah.
the part of the roller skating lesson is you're going to get hurt,
Right. I'm
and
like,
it's
it's
not
kind of
going
like
to be the
riding
end
a
of the world.
bike.
Yep, it'll be fine. You'll
Yeah.
get through it. That's part of the lesson.
So how was your Christmas?
It was busy. We had
Yeah.
some and all
Ooh.
around.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's fun.
but all around, it was wonderful. And again, holidays are not done. We're still
Yep.
gonna kind of celebrate, roll into the next thing. Take a little road trip, go see some lights and stuff and fireworks.
Nice.
So yeah,
We got the girls like little suitcase. They don't have suitcases. They always would we'd put stuff in like our suitcases, but they're big enough to like carry suitcases through the airport now. So we got them little suitcases, and inside was like Disney clothes. We are taking the kids to Disney World on Sunday, so that was our big present for the year.
there you
Roller
go.
skates and Disney World.
There you go. That'll be
Cool.
amazing. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So this is crazy. This is going to be our last show of the year, season 3, episode 44. That means we have done 44 shows this year. Pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that's a big
Especially
deal.
with our travel schedules, it's sometimes hard to get shows in.
Yep.
But I think we did a pretty good job this year. So excited about that. And then the next time you will see us will be in season 4 in the new year, far in the new year.
Long time away. Oof.
Yeah. So this is going to be kind of a review. The biggest thing is we'd like to take some questions to Sean.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like review. Like, what are the things that stand out for you? What are the episodes that stand out? Like, what are the topics that stand out when you look back?
Let me, before we get into that, let me kind of kick this off.
Okay.
Again, we do this live stream usually every Monday. Again, holidays this week, we changed it up a little. Usually every Monday from 1 to 2 Eastern. You can catch the replay of this live stream over on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. And everything that we kind of mentioned will be in the show notes for the YouTube show. And after this, we will turn this into a podcast, and you can kind of get this wherever you get your podcasts at. So with that, if you're joining us today, as DaShaun said, let us know what were your highlights of 2024 when it comes to Spring Office Hours or JDK. We get a new JDK release every 6 months. We get a new Spring Boot release every 6 months. So we have a couple of those for both the JDK and Spring Boot that we can talk about. What were your highlights in 2024? And I see we have some friends already joining us. Look at this. We kind of did this last minute, and all of our friends are here. This is great.
It's awesome. When you join, if you're here live, make sure you say hello, tell us where you're from, because that is awesome. My parents are always watching, and it's fun for them to see where everybody's joining from. And you've got questions, bring them. If you come to my house for dinner, when you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. So bring your questions. It's good to see you.
We have a question right off the bat that I don't have an answer to, but we'll ask it anyway. Hi, just want to ask about functional bean registration with GraalVM still not working. I don't even know. I didn't even know that was the case. Were you aware of that?
No, I was not aware of that, and I'm trying to think like, why? What's happening? I'm gonna need a little bit more information because with GraalVM we can always give it a hint.
Yep.
If we're creating one of these beans and we need to add an implementation, we can give it a hint. We can tell GraalVM where to go to look for the code. So we shouldn't have any issues.
And the functional style of bean registration is something that is in the Spring framework. So I would think that the Spring framework has that covered. So yeah, I would say if you can let us know what's wrong with that, why is it not working? And two, if you is there an issue out there for this? If there is, go ahead and link us that. If there's not, I think we need to get an issue created so that the team is aware of that. But let's see if we can get a little more information on that. Another question here from Lovish: how to start Spring Boot? I don't know if this is a question or if this is a, hey, this was one of my favorite shows this year because I did a show on that, right?
Awesome.
At least we did season 3, episode 8, resources for learning Spring. I think that would be a really good episode to go back and check out, DaShaun, when it comes to learning Spring Boot, because we had a lot of fun with that episode, right?
Yes.
We basically did a live gathering of resources. We did, like you did your magic on the drawing board.
Yep.
And then we took those and we put them into a GitHub repo, and they're out there for everyone to see. And I think while you're talking, I'll go ahead and find that and paste.
And that was a cool thing, just that episode. And then we did it at least one more time with AI. The whole like in real time, like let's build the resources. Let's see where people are going to find information and how people are getting started. That was fun. That was a fun approach, and I liked it. And that's something that I think we should probably like revisit every once in a while, or maybe once a season. Be like, hey, like what's cool? Where are the new places to start? Obviously, you come here when you've got questions, but then also like there's a ton of resources. So we're trying to put these resources out there, make them available, so that you can go and find them and get started.
Yeah, so for the live stream, folks, I threw the link in there, github.com/spring-office-hours, and then there's a resources learning Spring. So if you're just getting started with Spring, all the great resources are there. I think that's a really good place to look. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll go ahead and get that added to the show notes. I think somewhere along.
I like this question.
This one.
This question is that from Daily
Daily gaming videos.
How can I learn Spring Framework fast without creating a project? Like one of the things you can get an overview. Whether or not it's going to stick, that's another question. But if you're wanting like to get an overview, to understand Spring Boot without breaking open a keyboard and mouse, I think that there's 2 books that I think would do the best job. If you're not going to do any of the code, if you're not going to do anything, there's 2 that I think bubble up to the top for me. The first one is Spring Boot Up and Running by Mark Heckler. And that one I say because and this is, I guess, a Spring Boot. So maybe I'm taking you off course here because you asked about Spring Framework, and that's 2 different things, right?
Well, we get this question a lot too. Like, hey, do I learn Spring Boot first or do I learn Spring Framework first? And I'm like, you always start with Spring Boot, right? Because that is the way you bootstrap your projects. You go to start.spring.io, you're using Spring Boot. You don't want to create a Spring project from scratch. Like that's not a lot of fun.
And that's the real question too, is like, are you trying to get to production? Are you trying to deliver value? Because if you are, I think that Spring Boot is the fastest, best way to do it. So yeah, I'll stick with my answer. Spring Boot Up and Running by Mark Heckler. And then the other one is Craig Wall's Spring in Action.
And there's a third, the documentation, of course.
Of course, the documentation. But like for the overview, the documentation, like for if you're going to read something front to back, that one will take a while.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like, if you just want to kind of consume some knowledge, you can go through the docs, you can go through a book, but are you really going to like get that experience of building an app by just reading about what somebody else is telling you to do? Like, you have to like have that experience.
Yeah.
And so one of the good things that you can do is go to spring.io/guides. You can also get to the guides over on spring.academy. And these guides are like little walkthroughs of like building one piece of functionality. Like, hey, I want to build a REST API, or I want to connect to a database, or I want to do AI, right? Like these guides will walk you through how to do a specific thing so that you get hands-on experience with that. So
there's another former pivot friend of the show, Mick Pollard. The way that he explained this, the phrasing that he looked is like, you can read the rule book for American football, and that won't make you a football player. Playing football and practice is how you become a football player. The same thing translates over here. You can read all you want about Spring Framework and Spring Boot, but that's not going to make you a Spring developer.
That's a great analogy. I just picked up golf a couple of years ago. I watch YouTube golf videos all the time. I watch these and I go, oh man, I'm going to be really good now. And I go out there and I'm still not good.
Wait, the hole's my ball. Grab another ball out of my bag. Yeah.
The guy on YouTube just hit the ball straight 300 yards. Why can't I
did it just like this? I'm doing it just like he is. What's going on?
So yeah, you gotta get the practice in. We always say you gotta get those reps in, right, DaShaun?
Every rep counts. Absolutely.
David says, Happy Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you, David, so much.
Yes, Happy Christmas.
Hello. From Dream Wrestling, what do you think about AI replacing Spring Boot? I don't think it's really there to replace Spring Boot, right?
No.
AI is not replacing Python.
Yeah. But there's this question here about like the things that we write with Spring Boot. And I'd actually, I'll put this back at you. Like, Dan, how many things are we replacing with Spring Boot and Spring AI?
Right now, zero. Like, I don't know that we're replacing anything. If anything, we're just kind of augmenting our work and maybe replacing. Yes, maybe we are automating some of the things that are like mundane tasks that we don't want to do to free us up to do other things. So at this point, it's not replacing us. It's just making us more productive so we can work on the things that we want to work on.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that, and I think I've said this here on the show, similarity search, take away all of the AI, the GPT, take away all of that stuff. Similarity search replaces most, if not all, of the types of indexing and search functionality that I've ever created ever. Mm-hmm. A 5-minute similarity search replaces all of it, and not only replaces it, it's better and faster than any other, for no matter what size database we're looking at. The similarity search that we get with these vector databases is amazing. The other thing, which we're still kind of waiting for some of these to get to production to be like a real story, but we're also seeing a lot of Spring AI and ChatGPT and these kind of GPTs replacing a lot of stuff that we did with Python. You know, our tensors and our I'm trying to think of the other libraries that it. But it's replacing a lot of the stuff that we took to production with Python, 5-10 years ago, and now it's being replaced with easier, faster, better.
Yeah, when we got into this and we were going to start talking about 2024, I mean, you can't deny it. Like, AI was the biggest topic in our industry. It has like taken over tech as a whole. And even from a Spring Office Hours standpoint, I want to kind of tie this back into this. We've done some episodes this year. So if you want to go back into the archives, season 3, episode 7, on February 26th, we had Craig Walls on to talk about Spring AI. Craig's awesome to talk about Spring AI about. He's writing the book on Spring AI right now, which you can get on Manning early access right now. I think he's got like 8. No, he's got like 3 chapters left. I think he's got like 8 or 9 chapters done. So you could check that out. Just looking here. I know we did What's New in Spring AI 1.0.0 milestone 1. That was season 3, episode 22. What else? Building Awesome Spring AI with Mark Pollock. That's season 3, episode 36. That's where we went into that whiteboard and built out that list of awesome resources. So we've had some discussions on AI on the show. If you're interested, you can go back and check out the archives.
And we talked about it in probably half of the shows, if not all.
Yeah. I think for me, I had a real aha moment with AI this year. One, because as we were coming into 2024, you and I, as developer advocates, are always like looking at like what are the topics we're going to be talking about next year. And I knew AI was going to be one of those. I wanted to like learn more. I wanted to present more on it. And before, for me, it was just like this kind of magic trick, right? It was like put in some text, get some text back, and like, that's a nifty party trick, but like I don't know that I'm ever going to use that. And I think once I got my like hands on it, once I learned like how to like use like prompt engineering, communicating with these LLMs properly, and learning some of the tools out there, I was like, wow, like for everyday stuff that I'm doing, like I'd say I'm not a real engineer. I'm not like working for a company spitting out a product every 2 weeks, right? But I am working on demos and like different types of applications. And for me, it's just like, hey, I'm building this demo and I don't want to build this UI because that's going to take me a week. Like, I don't want to spend a week doing that. I have other things I could be doing. And just to like say, hey, build me this UI in Vue and Tailwind and use Spring Boot on the back end. I was like, oh, I got this demo. I can go like show people off this thing. And just, again, it didn't replace me. It just made me more productive and be able to work on different things. So that was a lot of fun this year. And I think I'm going to take that into 2025 for sure.
Yeah. I'm still getting there. I'm still like pulling it in, but also getting comfortable using AI for whatever to help to make it more productive instead of spinning my wheels. Like, go ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. We're in a good spot.
Merry Christmas for a newbie in spring. What are your recommendations? Yeah, again, check out that. Yeah, build something. Check out that the list of resources we mentioned earlier in the show that you also find in the show notes. Those are a lot of good resources to get started. Start with the guide. Start with Spring Academy. Start with the documentation and just build something. I always found, we've talked about this on the show a lot, but I've always found like in the past when I want to learn something, if I have something invested in it, like I built my own blog or I built my own website and I had to like learn all these things and fail and then learn them and like get success out of them, right? Building something that I was interested in always really helped me out. I was just talking to our good friend Nate last week, and he built this like side project to like track his son's soccer stats, right? And then we were just talking about he wanted to build some upgrades into it because now it wasn't just matches. There were like seasons and there were tournaments and like how could we adjust that? So yeah, if you have something that's like close to you that you're interested in, that's a really, really good way to get started. And it doesn't need to be big. Start small, MVP.
And let's just back up for a second. That doesn't even mean just for a newbie. Nate's not a newbie by any means.
Exactly.
Right? At any point in your career, you want to level up. You want to understand something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Go build something because there's massive value in understanding those technologies or learning new technologies. If you want to learn Python, and you can have the same project. One was like from the Pivotal days. One that we did was build a bowling scorekeeper. This is how you keep track of, like, the rules are in place, but how are you going to build it? And if you want to go learn Python, build it in Python. You want to go learn Spring Boot, build that same thing in Spring Boot. And you can, having some domain that's easy to understand or that you understand well, and then go build something with it. That is a powerful, powerful skill, a technique, a muscle to have, is build something, period.
Yeah, speaking of that in AI, I saw somebody on Twitter did something similar, but kind of reverse engineered that, took an app and then took it to like every LLM that they could think of and said, here are the requirements for my project, help me build this. And it was a way of like kind of, hey, how are these LLMs attacking this problem? What is their solution to these problems? Kind of giving each of them a grade. Like, I thought this one did really well in this, and this one did better in this. So yeah, if you're playing around with AI, same thing. You can do that a little bit faster, but you can take it to every LLM. And we always say with Spring AI, one of the great things is it's kind of LLM agnostic, right? We can use Google Gemini, we can use OpenAI, we can use Anthropic's Claude. And you can plug and play those. So try those out, like see how they work for you.
Now, I'm still like not excited about spending money on Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude.
I spent all the money.
but I go to them for different things. Like there's like I just know that the response that I get from Claude for this is better. I know that the response I get from Gemini for this is better.
Yep.
Like I've already got kind of my favorites
Me too.
figured out, the
Yep.
things that fit me. So now I'm putting, and tell me if I'm way off here, but now I'm putting kind of this layer in front, even if it's just like on my desktop. I'm putting this layer in front. Like when I ask this kind of question,
Yep.
I want to go to ChatGPT. When I ask
Yeah.
this kind of
No.
question, I want to go.
Yeah, that's good.
But I still have all the LLMs running locally. So even
Yep.
though I do reach out
Yeah.
and go there, I still have Mistral and CodeGemma. A lot of the code ones, I'm just trying to do that fast inner loop with these, the ones that help with code.
Yep.
And again, it's up and down. But there was one point where I had 12 different LLMs running. And we'll see what happens in the new year. But having them running locally is fun. Oh, and I actually have back here. If you look in the back, for those that are
I
just
see a
listening,
Samsung something.
nope, there's
Oh.
two GPUs.
Oh, nice.
I got a good deal on a couple of GPUs. They're old, they're 3060s, but the price was right.
Nice.
So I'm still excited about all the stuff, and it doesn't take a lot of power, right? These I got for hundreds, not
Yep.
thousands. I got it 179 or something like that.
Nice.
And to get that sub-second response time from an LLM,
Yeah.
like that's all you need. That's plenty.
Yeah. Speaking of, did you see, I know you're a big Raspberry Pi enthusiast. Did you see what NVIDIA's coming out with? The new little like
Already ordered it.
supercomputers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The orange. Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, DaShaun's going to
Yep.
love that.
So
And can you daisy chain those things together too? Like a Raspberry Pi? I wonder.
I don't know. I don't know.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, but I've had a couple of models of the Jetsons. So yeah, I've already ordered them. The CPU is ARM64. The GPUs are like 24 core NVIDIA. Like significantly better. And only like $40 more than the Nano dev kits.
Nice.
So yeah, it's on the way.
Cool.
It's on the way. That'll be fun.
All right, friend of the show, Alexander. Thanks for keeping the Spring community up to date with everything. Keep this work going. As it's already been said, life was much harder before this show. Greetings from Macedonia.
Alexander, thank you so much for those kind words. I realized that back when we did the show on Tuesday, you were there for like our first, 50, 60 shows. And it's so good to have you here. Yeah. Happy holidays to you. And thanks for the kind words.
That's great to hear, because that was a lot of the reasons why we started the show. It's like, we wish we had a resource like this when we were trying to learn some of these things, right?
You know what else? One of the things that I've been talking a lot about lately is, right, for Alexander, for anybody, when you're trying to educate, you want to be a developer advocate. Like we say here, we were developer advocates long before we worked here on this team. You can be a developer advocate. And one of the things that I've been practicing or I've been sharing is like, if you come and watch this show normally on a Monday, and you get like, hey, here's the topic this week. If you do your own office hours on Tuesday or Wednesday, you are free to use the same topics that we talk about. You're free to go and make your own demos and custom fit it for your group, for your organization, for your team. That's kind of the part of the practice too. So what we talk about here is just a topic. And if you've got topics that you like, we've got links so you can let us know what you'd like to talk about. And instead of, here's my tip, instead of saying, oh, I've got this one small problem, do a whole show on this one small problem, give us a topic that you'd like to know more about, that you'd like to learn about. That'll go a lot further.
Yeah, and actually, if you head over to springofficehours.io, there is a place up there in the navigation to go ahead and suggest a topic for a future show. Do that, and we'll see if we can't get to it.
Perfect.
Here's another question. Hello from Ecuador. I'm learning about DDD, domain-driven design, with Spring. For me, it's a little bit tricky. Maybe some advice. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say start with Spring Modulith. This
Yeah.
is a it's a project from Spring that will help you identify some of those borders. It'll help you identify circular dependencies, and it also draws really pretty pictures so you can see what you are building. And out of the box, it gives you some guidance around the architecture. But it is suited for DDD type development. So my number one advice is to start with Spring Modulith. And I'll say this, that I'm defaulting to Spring Modulith more and more these days. Like I'm adding it out of the box, even if I'm just building a microservice, because of all the other niceties, the features that it includes with it.
Yeah, I'll give you two resources. One, Domain-Driven Design by Eric Evans. It's a book from 2003. It still holds up. You don't even need to read the entire book. There's like a couple chapters in there that are kind of relevant to like just this. But that book is a must-have for anyone. And then I will say still the most popular talk from Spring I/O last year was implementing domain-driven design in Spring by our friend Machai, and that is, I'll go ahead and link to that in the description below as well. That's a really good video on DDD in Spring, and I think that will be a good starter for you. And actually, let me just kind of post this for the live stream audience as well, just so we have that. Cool. Yeah, I think we're just taking questions here.
This is great. I like this one. Yeah. Oh. How does the future of Spring backend developer look like? Like what's going to happen? Because I can mostly do a lot of things in my job with Copilot and ChatGPT, which is what scares me. No, don't let it scare you. You should be happy that you're able to check the boxes and move forward. That's the whole idea. If you can't do that, then you should be scared.
Yeah.
But if you can use those tools that are available and you can move things forward, congratulations. You're going to be just fine.
This may look very different in 5 years, but I can tell you now, if you sat me down next to somebody who's just starting Spring Boot, and we both have ChatGPT or Claude, and we can use that as a resource, I've found myself like asking questions, asking the right questions, getting responses, and my knowledge of 24 years of programming and building things for the web, I can quickly see that and go, nope, that's not what I meant. Let's iterate on that. Okay, that part's good. Let's do this. You know, there's a lot of back and forth with, you know, prompting LLMs and trying to get the right result, right? So that's first. Being able to notice those things in the middle of a prompt, like you're not going to do that if you've been doing this for a year. You might get a product at the end of the day, but maybe it's not as good as the one I can get out of it because I know what questions to ask and I know how to iterate on it. So for me, that's one thing. Two, I think, again, I've been doing this a while. I think every step of the way in my career, I have gained knowledge. So I'm a big proponent of gaining as much knowledge as you can. But I've also been very adaptable. Like, what is the trend this year? Is that something I need to learn? If it is, okay, I'm going to learn that, get up to date on that. And now I've just made myself a more valuable programmer. So I think as long as you're willing to learn and you're adaptable, even if AI replaced us in 5 years, right? You still have a need for you. It may not be the same thing that you're doing today, but there'll be a need for you if you're willing to adapt. So yeah, I wouldn't let it scare you. Yeah, that's just not. That's how I'm wound, DaShaun.
Yeah, I'd say it's the opposite. Like you're in a good position if you feel comfortable working with Copilot and ChatGPT. Yeah, keep doing that.
Are there any limitations on using async and retryable? I don't know from a limitation. Not that I can think of. Yeah. I would say try it out, and if you hit some limitations, let us know.
Yeah, none that I can think of.
Spring Boot project. There is not compatible between the last versions of Gradle, Java, Kotlin. Other question: when Spring Boot start using Kotlin 2.x? I don't know what
Uh,
I'm not very versed on Kotlin, so I'm not
and
sure
the
what
versions.
even.
And
Yeah.
I know that the latest versions of Kotlin can't use the latest versions of Java, and that has
Mm.
been an issue. But that's okay. Like it'll eventually get there. And the feedback has been that a lot of the newer features that are being added to the JVM, they already kind of exist in Kotlin. So feel comfortable, keep using Kotlin, keep using Spring with Kotlin, and I think you'll be okay. But yeah, like things are moving fast and they're not going to slow down. New version of Java every 6 months, new version of Spring Boot every 6 months, new framework every year. And yeah, we're just moving faster. It's not going to slow down. I definitely would think that if cadence were going to change, I think it would change. It would change for the faster instead of slower. But I like this cadence. I think that this cadence is doable,
Mm.
especially with a lot of the help that we get with Open Rewrite and things built on top of Open Rewrite. In order to keep up, maintainability is again the most important thing that you're going to do in
Hmm.
software. This has actually been top of my mind because I see
Yeah.
this conversation in the small chat communities, and I'm speaking to one in particular in Africa, that Spring Boot community on WhatsApp. One of the comments that kind of stuck in my head is like, I write good code, I write mature code, advanced code, and my question back to you is, can somebody else maintain it? When you're gone, can somebody else pick up that code and maintain it and keep it good? That is
Hmm.
the most important thing. There's a lot of conversations about like leak code and what can you do. Like this is my answer on the leak code. Like should you do it or not? I don't care if you can solve the problem. I don't care if you can do it in the most optimal way. What I care about the most is can I maintain it when you're gone? Can I understand your solution and can I maintain it when you're gone? That is the number one thing. I don't care how elite, so I'm doing the air quotes, I don't care how
Yeah.
elite you are. If I can't understand your code, then I'm sorry, you're not going to do that. And that's a hard thing for me to like
Yeah.
admit to. And that's a hard thing for me to like come to grips with because I understand the value of having somebody on the team that knows how to crank out stuff and knows it like in the back of the head. But I also know the pain of when that person is gone and when I don't
Yep.
understand what they did and I don't know how to do it and how to take care of it. So,
It's a tricky situation to be in because I remember working with someone who was brilliant, wrote a whole bunch of code. Every time anybody else on the team, 20 different people would check out this code, they would go, "What WTF?
yeah.
What is going on here? Like this is." And it's not like it's not that it was like so much better performant that's why they did it. It's just like they had a style of how to write code, and it's just like, okay, this is great, but nobody else can update it. Like you're the only one that can update this code because nobody else understands it. So
Yeah. WTF in this case is what's this for? That's,
here you go.
yeah.
That's one way of saying it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question. Actually, more of a comment. I loved passkeys and OTT support. Awesome stuff with 3.4.x.
That was our
That
Rob
was
Winch
that was
episode.
yeah. What was that? That was two episodes ago, or that was last episode, right? That was the last one we did.
No, we had Siva last, didn't we?
No, we had Rob last. So yeah,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
season 3, episode 43.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to hear what's new in Spring Security 6.4, as our lovely listeners pointed out,
Yeah.
passkeys and one-time token support was really big.
Kieran's awesome. Like he's really good at writing blogs and he does a good job with his blog. So hey, thank you. I'm glad you're here. And sorry about the hat. Yeah, it's upstairs. It's around. It's just been a little hectic with holidays.
Another question. I started learning Spring Boot directly after learning Java. Should I also learn JSP, Hibernate, servlets? No to all that.
No.
Well, indirectly, you'll learn some stuff about servlets along the way, but you don't have to learn about them directly.
The whole idea of Spring, what Spring does is it provides an abstraction layer over those deeper, concerns. So don't feel like you've got to know a bunch of things deeply. What I want you to do, my recommendation, and this is for you, I consider you a friend. This is our community. I want everybody to be successful. Don't go deep on something that you don't need to. You don't have to learn everything deeply. What you need to do is you need to figure out what you're going to take to production. You need to figure out, does somebody else on your team already know it deeply? And then if there's a gap on your team, go deep on that. Like, go figure out what's going to help your team, your product, your line of business. Go figure out what's going to help them the most. That's what I want you to go deep on. Don't learn a topic just to learn it.
Yeah, and don't learn Hibernate if you're not using Hibernate to like work unless you like have a reason to learn it, right? As DaShaun said, Spring kind of this abstraction layer on top of Java. Let's say you wanted to talk to a database. There are many ways to do so. You could use the lower level APIs in Java to do this. Not a lot of fun. There are some abstraction levels that Spring has baked in, like the JDBC template, now the JDBC client, which has this nice Fluent API. So you don't need to know anything. You can just write straight SQL to talk to a database, which is nice. Then there is Spring Data. So it gives you another level of abstraction on top of that. There's Spring Data JPA, which sits on top of Hibernate. There's Spring Data JDBC, which, again, will give you like the CRUD functionality out of the box without needing to know Hibernate. So yeah, there are different abstraction layers. Pick the level of abstraction layer that you need. And then as far as JSPs go, unless you're maintaining like legacy code, I would not learn JSPs today. There are many other templating languages, Timeleaf. JTE is a really cool one that I've been exploring on the channel this year, so take a look at that. But yeah, there are other things. Again, work backwards too from your goals. Why are you learning these things? What's the reason for learning these? If it's to get a job and you have a specific job in mind, look at them. What are they asking for? Then you can kind of work backwards from that.
Let's just, answer this. I think we already kind of touched on it. Hi, I wanted to ask about, hey, we're living in the AI era. How does Spring Boot update within this? Like, what's going on? How's Spring Boot going to help me?
Spring AI.
Spring
AI. If you're not aware of Spring AI, it is a project that is still not GA,
but we got a new milestone.
And I think I can say this now because Mark has put it into one of the releases. It was buried like at the bottom. He said one more release, and then we'll probably go to a release candidate and a GA in January. So I don't know if that's in stone yet, but we are getting to a release candidate.
Put your hands up. There we go.
So yeah, Spring AI, definitely something to check out. Again, I think we've talked about this in the shows. Go back and check out some of these shows. But AI is now, there was for the longest time, it was more of a Python thing because Python had all of these frameworks and tools for training these large language models. But now we're in the era of like any language or any framework could take advantage of these large language models. We're just calling a REST API. There's a lot more that goes on, but at the end of the day, we're calling an API to use these generative AI capabilities. So any language or any framework can take advantage of it, and Spring is well positioned to do so because of Spring Framework, Spring Boot, Spring Security, the mature projects that we have across our ecosystem, and Spring AI kind of now building on top of that.
Yeah, good. Happy Christmas from Greece. That's amazing.
Oh, awesome.
Welcome. I learned Java and shifted to Spring Boot. Should I learn? No, we already did that one. Oh, here, look at hey, is GraalVM made to be a headache? Because it's been days of trial and error. No, GraalVM is not made to be a headache, and
no.
I would love to help you out more, but GraalVM at this point is it's pretty easy. We've been doing it for a long time, even before it was available with Spring Boot 3 and Spring Framework 6. We had Spring Native, and we were able to do a lot of things. There are very few projects that I have in my GitHub or any of my GitHub orgs that can't be optimized with GraalVM. There are very few. I have done this with so many teams. The biggest thing isn't about, hey, do I get a compilable, workable app? The biggest thing is, can I convince the rest of the org to take this to production when there's no JVM? All the other things that you have to do when there's no JVM, because the JVM is pretty amazing. But I'm a Raspberry Pi fan, and GraalVM is the key to taking Spring Boot enterprise grade production ready applications to devices like Raspberry Pis. So no, it's not meant to be a headache. there are some things that you're going to have to learn and figure out, like the metadata repository. Do you have the GraalVM dependency added? Because that's going to save you a bunch of headaches. If you don't have that GraalVM dependency, then yeah, you're causing yourself some trouble.
And turn debugging on. Turn your log levels on to debugging, because you'll get a lot more information pointing you to kind of probably where the problem is. I just had that problem with JTE. I had an issue with, I was trying to create a native executable with JTE and realized that, like, oh, it couldn't find the template, and it was looking for like these bin files that were somewhere. And sure enough, that was in the log somewhere. That and the great Dr. Dave Sire helped me out with that and helped me figure that out. So, it's helpful if you can have access to the Spring team.
Yes. But you have access to us. Like, ask the questions. But make sure you have the GraalVM native support added to your project, and that'll save you a bunch of pain.
Yeah, and I was another just kind of big good use case for GraalVM native images. So hats off to the Spring team, to the GraalVM team. I like to build a lot of tools, and like some of these tools I'm not putting out in the public for the world to use, maybe because they're just not polished, or maybe I just want to give it a try first. Maybe I don't want to pay hosting costs for these things, right? I just create native executables that run on my machine, and then I can create aliases on my machine. Just like when I have a command line open, I can run that tool, and maybe it opens a browser, maybe it runs on the command line. That has been a lot of fun this year. We did a lot of that last year. I've continued that this year. I love building these little like command line tools or native executable tools that I can just run right from my machine.
Absolutely. Guess what? Now I'm watching your video to learn about security. Thanks, Dan. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you. It's another big highlight of 2024 for me has definitely been the YouTube channel. That thing has grown crazy. I had a couple videos, 2 videos alone have went over 1 million views. So that was insane. I had one video, the Spring Boot crash course, inside of 30 days had like 175,000 views. I was like, Jesus, this is crazy. So yeah. Thank you for everyone for supporting the YouTube channel this year. That's been a lot of fun.
Oh, here's a good one. Hi, I wanted to ask about what are the advantages when using fetch all compared to fetch in JPA? All. When anytime I have a all, get all, fetch all, any of those, I'm like, those are good for like small things. But once you get
demos,
like once you get beyond like 5, then those types of things become tricky. One of the things that we did get added is our list repositories, CRUD or CRUD list repositories, where we can now handle things with lists much better. So paging and sorting becomes a whole lot easier, and you get lists instead of iterables. So maybe you want to check that out. But advantage.
Yeah, and like you said, you're never gonna fetch all, and you want to be careful with that. And then there's pagination, and then if you're dealing with JPA, you have things like eager fetching versus lazy fetching. Those are the optimizations I would be taking a look at. You're never just gonna say, give me all 30 million rows from a database.
Our teammate Josh talks about the defaults with Hibernate, for example. Like at first, the default was like fetch all, and the big optimization was just to go and turn off the eager fetching. And make everything lazy. And then later the default switched, and then they were like, oh, nope. And then the problems that you would go, oh yeah, enable, fetch all.
Yep.
Enable the lazy load. Just these kind of flips. You got to understand what's happening under the covers. That is a really important piece.
Yep. Cool. All right. I got another question here, I think, from Jabra. Spring Boot DevTools and Spring tooling have been key enablers for productivity. Were there any new features or integrations released this year that developers should leverage?
That's a good question.
I know some things have been added to the actuator. So the Spring Boot actuator is one of those dependencies that you should add to every single project. And again, I think since Spring Boot 3, observability was kind of rewritten from the ground up. And ever since then, in every new release of Spring Boot and Spring Framework, something new has been added around observability. So I would take a look at the actuator. I know that it has like the SBOM feature now. that has gotten a lot of like features added to it that I think I would take a look at. Not directly, but my favorite IDE out there, which is IntelliJ Ultimate Edition, that for me is like the tool to use. DaShaun and I have been paying for that by us out of our own pocket forever. That just seems to get better and better and better, and there's some great tools in there to for a Spring developer.
I think I started paying for it. I think my company bought it the first year in like 2002, but I think in 2003 is the first year that I started paying for it.
They should send you a plaque or something.
That would be cool. That'd be cool. But yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I like it. I do Raspberry Pi development. Like I do a lot of stuff with it, and I'm comfortable with it. So there's no real need for me to change because I feel comfortable. I don't feel limited in any way. But I don't like this idea of like, oh, that's the better one and you should do this. I think if you're looking for an idea, if you don't have a favorite, look at your team. You want to be able to be leveled up by the people around you. So if your whole team is using VS Code, then you should use VS Code because you're gonna level up with them. But if your whole team is using Vim, use IntelliJ. I'm just kidding. Like you
don't want to get trapped.
Yeah, you don't want to get trapped. Use what your team is using, and that'll be the best position. There's a lot of IDEs out there, tons of great options to choose from, but you just want to be productive and you want to be able to level up.
Some other again, just tools. Again, if you're probably already using them, but the different LLMs out there. Learn how to use them, play around with them. As DaShaun said, he may go to Gemini for one thing, he may go to Claude for another thing, he may go to ChatGPT for another thing. Play around with these technologies and see which ones will get you better results for the things that you're doing. Another just random productivity tool that is top of mind for me that I've been using a lot lately is Raycast. So this is like a replacement for the application launcher on Mac OS that has a lot of really cool built-in productivity things. But yeah, I don't think outside of like your IDE, and there are some tools out there for like testing APIs. But again, I use IntelliJ, so I use like the built-in HTTP client for that. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of tools out there that I can think of, but I would say the Spring team does a great job of finding things, and like I said, with the actuator, there have been a lot of things added this year as far as observability goes. So that is the dev tools, and the actuator should be added to every single project that you create. There's no need not to have them.
Yeah, the other is like GraalVM. To bring back to GraalVM, as I can now build native images for my team. From my machine. So if I've got part of my team is on ARM64, part of them is on AMD64, from any machine, I can build ARM64 images or AMD64 images using the Spring Boot Maven plugin. That's a big bonus for me. And then to go back to the data conversation, there is a ton of new capabilities being added inside of Spring Data. And even though those might not be like developer productivity things, they are getting to production productivity things. So I would say take a look at what's new in Spring Data and observability. Observability is so important. When we talk about maintainability of code, observability is so critical that you should be understanding observability. You should be delivering the metrics that matter to your application. Nobody understands the application better than you, the author. So make sure you're delivering the right metrics. Don't trust somebody else to generate metrics and graphs for your application.
One thing I forgot about, the Spring Initializer is constantly getting updates. And we got a couple of updates in that this year, one of which was bookmarks. So if you haven't checked it out, there's a way to bookmark a feature in the Spring Initializer. That is always getting constantly tweaked. So definitely check that out.
That's almost like something that we should touch base on every week. Like, hey, what's new in Spring Initializer? Because it has been getting updated. That's another thing that we could probably say this year.
Yeah.
Right. A couple of years ago, 2020, 2021, every database out there was adding JSON, adding that JSON data type and being JSON native. And this year, the last 12 months ish. Every database now has vector database, vector columns, and that has been, looking back, that has been a huge thing for this year.
Yeah, and I just want to say a huge shout out to the team of them for maintaining the Spring Initializer. There's an endpoint that you hit, and this is why when you go to the Spring Initializer, when you use it inside of like STS or IntelliJ, that you get a consistent experience because they all use this endpoint. And I didn't realize what this did until I started building my own Raycast plugin. So it's not officially out yet, but I can do it on my own machine from Raycast. I can create a new Spring project from Raycast. And I built this thing because there's an endpoint that you can just say, hey, what are the versions of Java that are supported right now? What is the current stable version of Spring Boot? And it like returns all of those things for you. So I was able to quickly build out a Spring Initializer like feature within Raycast because of that endpoint. And that was brilliant. So awesome work, team.
Last thing, and this is my reach. This is the thing that I use that I don't think a lot of developers are using because it's an experimental project, the Spring CLI.
Yeah.
So with early versions of Spring AI, the Spring CLI was kind of a part of the documentation, and those projects kind of like grew together at the beginning. But the Spring CLI, I would love for you to take a look at it because it does integrate with the Spring Initializer. I could do Spring Boot new, and or Spring Boot start, and it uses the Spring Initializer. I can create a project from the command line, but I get walked through all the different sections. Hey, which build do you want to use, Maven or Gradle? Which JVM do you want to use, 22 or 21 or 23? What do you want to name it? You give it your project name, and you can also just click the defaults, and then you can choose the dependencies that you want to add. So you get all the benefits, but it's from a CLI. And it walks you through. And I have actually been using that a lot. And I've had a lot of questions like, hey, what was that tool that you used? That's not the Spring Boot CLI that we've known. That's the new Spring CLI. And right now it's not getting a whole lot of attention, but it's still super powerful. Yeah. I use it a ton because it's also got some other really cool features. It might be fun to revisit that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's one. Take a look at it.
And that's not something. So if you go to like SDK Man and install the Spring CLI, that is different. As DaShaun said,
Boot CLI.
There is a experimental project. Go out, check that out, and yeah, maybe we should do a show on that early in 2025.
Good question.
So got another question here. DaShaun, do you have any videos on how to set up a K8s cluster when having multiple Raspberry Pis?
I have multiple blog posts on it, but I will make a video just for you, Alexander. Because I too have a YouTube channel. I would like to have a million views one day. But yeah, baby steps. But for you, for that question, because I have been doing a lot, I have been repaving the home lab. I have tons of stuff here. I always have within arm's reach. I have Raspberry Pis of some shape or form, Raspberry Pi 5 8GB. I have a little cluster here with the PoE extension. So I've got Raspberry Pis, and I will absolutely make that video. And I tell you what I'll use. I will use K3S, and I will use K3sup, which is a good project to like easily add and remove hosts from Kubernetes clusters. So Thank you. Great question. And I will make that video for you. Yeah, coming right up.
Should I use STS4 or IntelliJ Community Edition? Again, this is a personal preference. One of the things I always say in all my videos, DaShaun, is you should use whatever text editor ID you're most productive in. Because if I give you something and you're not, it just doesn't feel right to you, you're not doing well, you're not productive in it, then it's no good, right? Like whatever you're most productive.
Yeah, there's like that fine line. If you're going into a team and the whole team is using STS4,
yes,
then maybe you want to use STS4. But if you're coming in and you're already, hey, you've been using IntelliJ Community Edition for years, then there's probably no need for you to switch. You're probably going to be just fine. Yeah. But until you have your comfort zone, until you have your tool that has your hotkeys, until you have that, yeah, I would say look at your team. Yep.
Another question: why do startups not prefer Spring Boot? Is it a concern for fresh job seekers in the market?
I don't know where this myth comes from. I have worked in many startups. I've consulted with many startups, and that is a myth that I don't witness it. There are tons of startups that start up using other things. But this is a myth, like that startups are afraid or don't prefer Spring Boot. I think it just depends on the community, where they're at, what they're dealing with. And it also depends on what's your goal. Like, I'm gonna try to say this without being like jerky. Like, there are some projects, there are some startups that their goals aren't as high. And there are some projects that know, like, if I want to go and play with the global 2,000 companies around the world that are all using Spring Boot, if I want to integrate well with their systems, I'm going to start with Spring Boot, right? But if I'm trying to like build something new and not integrate with something, maybe there's no need. But to say that startups don't prefer Spring Boot, I think that's a myth, and I don't know where that comes from. Yeah. Because I've got experience, and especially in this role, we are integrating and talking to that part of the community all over the world.
Yeah, I got another question here. Merry Christmas. I'm looking for a Saga pattern solution for Spring Boot data REST app with an Angular front end, and ask for your advice. I was just gonna say, isn't somebody like doing a live stream about this all the time?
Yeah.
Don't you do?
This is fun. We do we're not doing the Saga pattern, but we can next. We do a show called Stack of the Week. And yeah, we do have Angular front ends, and we can do that. But you want a solution, you want advice. The advice is like, you're on the right track. But my question back to you is, are you sure the Saga pattern is right? This is a question that Oliver's got this like, I can tell what the last book you read based on what you're developing, based on the way you're organizing your code. Saga pattern is great. I'm a big fan of it because of the flexibility, because I can do some of these really cool things, especially in distributed systems. So I do have a reference that might check your box. So I'm going to look at that. It's from the team over at Redis. They had a really good example that was all Spring Boot, and I believe it had a nice front end to it as well. So I'm going to go look for that. But you're on the right track. And thank you for asking that question, because Saga pattern is a pattern that I don't think gets enough discussion. What's Chris? Josh had him on his show a couple weeks ago. He did the event sourcing, event driven book. Chris Robinson? I feel like an idiot. Yeah, Saga pattern is great. Go. And fun thing is, like, if you would like to explore, Karen, who's on the stream today in the live chat, he does a good job of reaching out. He's like, hey, I'd like to explore this more. You can do that with us. We are here at your service. So if you'd like to talk, we're on the Twitters and the LinkedIns and all the places. Like, let us know. I am very comfortable. I'm not half as busy as Dan. So if you want to like sit down and talk through something, build something together, I'm happy to do that. Alexander, who's on the show, I've done that with him. Like, we can roll up our sleeves and we can help. Just don't be afraid to ask. Come on. So, like, I'm going to try to find that link, and I know we're running up against time here, but that is a great question. That is a question I don't hear enough, if I'm being honest. Talking about the Saga pattern. That is an awesome idea.
Hi, guys. Great work in Spring. By the way, do you know why it's named Spring? So, yeah, I think we talked about this on a show this year as we were talking with Rod. We didn't have him on the show, but we had talked to Rod about something. And so Rod Johnson, who created the Spring framework, it was originally named Interface 21. And then some others kind of joined the team, and they came up with the name Spring because, as a contrast to working with EJBs, it was like this fresh start. So spring is like the fresh start of the year, new beginnings, and that's why they ended up calling it Spring. But is there any more to that, or is that pretty much it?
Yeah, that's it. Fresh start. Right. The new way.
The new way, yeah.
Yep.
All right. We are up against it. I just want to mention as kind of a review of the year. Oh, go ahead. You can ask.
I was just looking at this. Yeah, Karen's like, yeah, we need a full cluster setup demo for Kate's on Raspberry Pis. I will do that. Like, thank you for the cool support. That's awesome.
Cool. As part of the review for 2024, I'll put in the release notes. Again, We have a new version of the JDK every 6 months. So this year, JDK 22 came out earlier in the year, I think March, and then JDK 23 came out in September. So I'll leave some links to those if you want to kind of revisit what was new in those versions. And then from the Spring side of things, we had Spring Boot 3.3.0 on May 23rd. I believe we had a show around that too, so go check the archives on that. And then Spring Boot 3.4, DaShaun did a show with Mr. Phil Webb on what was new in 3.4. So go ahead and check that out. And again, I'll leave all these links in the show notes.
I want to just run through the questions because we didn't get to them all, and I didn't even read them all. So I'm just going to like pop them up on the screen so when I'm watching the video later, we can see the kind of questions that were being asked. Oops, clicky. Just so that we have like, hey, we appreciate you guys asking questions. It is so fun. I'm so happy to see as many people here with the short notice. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm just bringing up these questions. I hope I don't click on any that are rude.
Thank you for that comment. I had the same problem with JTE. And, yeah, I made a video on it. If you're trying to take JTE into production, found some issues and fixed them pretty quickly. So
yeah, these are good and wonderful.
Oh, Simon's here. Now we can end the show.
Oh, and I got notes. I got notes for Simon. I'm excited about. I got a big old brain dump for Simon because Simon is also writing a book. I hope I'm okay to say that. And
it is. Well, you didn't say what it's on. So.
It is juicy. It's going to be good.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, 2024. Can't believe it's pretty much in the books at this point. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has supported this show this year. Again, 44 episodes. Pretty happy with that. We've had a lot of fun doing this, and we're not stopping. We're gonna keep going in the new year. We'll start with season 4. We have a couple of exciting things in the works. Some exciting guests. So, yeah, we'll every week that we can, we will show up. We will answer your questions when we can, try to keep you up to date with all the things that are going on in the ecosystem. And yeah, I hope that is helping you guys out. From what we've heard, it is. So
Dan, we've been doing this for 3 seasons.
Pretty crazy.
Congratulations. It has been a blast, and it's just going to get better.
Yeah.
It's just going to get better.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do is the first show in 2025 that we'll get scheduled, we'll do a little bit of a what's going to happen in 2025.
We should.
I like doing these.
2000. Yeah, we should do some like
predictions.
Yeah.
Yes, I love
make some predictions and see what's happening. And yes, this is the last video of 2024.
Yes, I like this time of year because I like wrapping the year up and I like looking forward to the new year, the fresh start. So we'll have a lot of fun with that one. But until then, everybody, again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us all year long. Look forward to seeing you in season 4 and DaShaun and everyone else out there. I hope you have a happy new year.
Yes.
Thanks again, friends.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.